day. So perfect for hopefully almost spring day, right? So we just have a few announcements and then we'll get started here with our speaker. On your table are a couple of things. The little purple handout is what we have coming up in April. Our next luncheon in April will be on the 20th. And we have Mo Nellis, who's a registered nurse with the Senior Life Solutions Program with Door County Medical Center. So she will be here. And in May, coming up on May 18th, we will have Millie Gonzalez, who is with Help with Door County. And they help with different types of abuse services. So that's what we have coming up. The little yellow guy on your table is all our events coming up between now and June. So if you want to mark your calendar and not miss anything, there will be more details coming on each one as they get closer. With our open house being on June 9th here, which we hope Calvin will be able to return for, and we will have multiple resources, local and off-island here as well. So, and I have the March ones up here if you still need March dates, because we're getting kind of through the month. Also on your table is a survey, so when we get towards Calvin's presentation, if you wouldn't mind filling this out, giving us some feedback, we appreciate it. You can leave it up here, or you can leave it at the sign-in table, and we appreciate you taking the time to do that. We also have ADRC handouts. Calvin has brought some of his materials. I'll let him explain that. One thing we're trying to remind people to do, and we hope you never need this is emergency information that we would like you to fill out, and it goes on the side of your fridge, and it should the rescue squad have to respond to you and say you couldn't respond yourself and there wasn't anybody else there, this will give them the information they need. So these are up here and over there, and it's front back, and then you put them up on your fridge. So when they walk in your door, they know to look on your fridge for it, and this can really be helpful if you're passed out and they need to know what meds or whatever you want. So we encourage you to take that, and also the little after-hours magnets. So when the clinic is closed, you need advice. These nice nurses work in the middle of the night, on the weekends, holidays, and they can give you medical advice. So those magnets are up at the check-in table. And with that, I think I have it. Do anybody have any questions about anything I said? Did I miss anything? I do have a few board people here, if you wouldn't mind just standing up, just so people still get to know who you are. I'll call on Connie Westbrook. She's my board president, is right here. We thank her for her dedication. Her husband sitting next to her is one of our food pantry coordinators, too. We thank him. Over here I have Jackie Rader. She is my VP on the board. Sitting next to her is Bunny Bexton. If you didn't meet Bunny at the previous luncheon, Bunny is our new program and a coordinator. So eventually, this is her baby. She will be running this eventually, okay? I've got Kim. Tell me your last name, Risto. Did I do it? Kim is on my board, and did I miss anybody? Judy Baseman, where are you hiding?
She had to leave.
Oh, she had to leave. All right, well, Pastor Ed's wife, Judy, is new to being on our board as well. So she was serving you the meat early. On that note, I'm going to hand it over to Calvin. I'm going to kind of let you introduce him, give your title, and let you, because I probably won't get it right.
Sure.
All right, so there you go.
Thank you. I got a very big mouth. Sometimes when I get a microphone, I really do this if I'm too loud with this thing. So my name is Calvin Richtig. I'm with Options for Independent Living. We are what's called an independent living center. I'm going to try to make this make sense without being too wordy, because I think I've only got about 30 minutes, and I can do this in 4 hours if you'd be willing to listen. So independent living centers are established federally. There's 455 throughout the country. In Wisconsin, we've got 8 independent living centers, and independent living centers were created to provide services for people with disabilities. Similar to a lot of the agencies, the ADRC, you guys are very fortunate here to have Y-CHIP. Not a lot of the communities have anything like Y-CHIP at all. So what's a little bit unique about independent living centers is they are required to be staffed and boarded by people with disabilities, at least 50%. And kind of the concept behind that is nothing about us without us. It's people with disabilities advocating for people with disabilities and providing services to people with disabilities. So we've all got some core services that federally we provide, and I'm going to use my little cheat sheet here. I'll turn this so I don't have to have my back at you. So all of the independent living centers provide advocacy services. So So that's systems advocacy or that's individual advocacy. So if you had a concern with an employer and you weren't sure if that was violating your rights with the ADA, we're a resource for you on that. We can help you walk through that, work with an employer, and overcome advocacy issues. Or if there's a business, or if you've got any other concerns as it relates to advocacy, we're a go-to for that, individually or systematically. So we work with, we've got a day every year, we go to the Capitol, and we work with all the legislators to try to promote equal access within our community. So advocacy is a core service. Peer support. So that's the real difference between us and some of the other service providers. I myself am not a person with a disability, and I'm in the minority of that. And there's a big advantage to having. I fell into, without making this a long story, I fell into this line of work. My father was injured in a motorcycle accident, quadriplegic as a result of it. It was about 16 years ago, and our family didn't know anything about disability at all, not to mention spinal cord injury. So we didn't have any resources. Our executive director at the time is a C5, C6 quad. Very same age as my father, very similar interests. So, you know, the doctors told him a lot about life, what life would be like as a quad. Service providers like myself might come in and tell him how to overcome barriers and those kind of things, but nobody could address what life is actually like by a quad from a quad who's got 30 years of lived experience with that kind of thing. So that's what makes independent living centers a little bit unique. So what we like to do is be able to pair up people. If somebody has a new diagnosis of Parkinson's, we've got a lot of consumers that we've worked with. We potentially have a staff or a board member that has lived with Parkinson's and might be able to be, if nothing else, somebody to talk to about it. Maybe you can ask some of those questions and they can share some of that lived experience that I as a provider can't maybe provide answers for. Information referral, that's kind of an overlap. I know the ADRCs provide that Y-chip here, so we can connect you with resources or information. That's pretty broad. And I'd like to point out, we're a nonprofit as well, and we're very collaborative with all of our agencies. So I'd love to promote that we're not fighting over who's going to provide what and where to turn for things. And I'd love to point out, make sure if you've got questions or not sure where to go, you've got a great team here with Y-chip. So if you're not sure if we're the appropriate resource, ask them first, and they can turn to us with questions, or they can connect us directly as well, or feel free to reach out. But we're not trying to, you know, there's some questions of, do I contact EDRC, or do I contact the Independent Living Center, or where do I go for what? Independent living skills training, so that's a big piece. All the literature, I'm going to try to not trip over this thing, but I probably will at one point. I've got a bunch of literature up here. I'm going to leave. I debated passing it around. If it's a smaller group, I like to introduce myself and lead it, but there's a lot of you here today, which is wonderful. So I'm just going to leave this up here, and it's a little information packet. We're actually operating right now under a grant we wrote specifically to provide services in Northern Door as a rural area. We found people in Northern Door, even on the peninsula, weren't accessing services, even in Sturgeon Bay. We get people in Sister Bay that weren't using services out of Sturgeon Bay or Green Bay. They just felt kind of isolated. So as a result of this, we collaborated, and I wasn't involved in the beginning, but I believe Y-chip and there's a few other program partners that are tied in with that. That has allowed us to have some additional funding. Obviously, it's no surprise to anybody that logistics is difficult to the island. So, you know, it was 3 hours for me to get here just from Green Bay, and then it's time on the ferry, and then it's a hotel, because if we come all the way up here and we've got a few consumers, that's a long day. So this grant has allowed us to pay for some of that lodging, to be able to stay up here, come and spend a few days to overcome some of those logistics differences, so that we can serve you all on the island no different, ideally, than what we can serve, you know, somebody who lives next door to us right in Green Bay. So this grant program is called Options for Northern Door, and I've got some of the outline. And I'm going to cover a lot of things on here today, but so independent living skills training, it relates to some of the things that we do with home safety, leisure, grooming needs, fall risk, medication management. So if you've got a bunch of meds and you're not sure how to keep track of it all, how to use your reminders, maybe you've got a pile that you need to take at 8 and then noon and 3, and they're all different colors. So we've got staff that can work with you on appropriate ways to be able to manage all of those different medications. Communication needs, cognition, memory, The other staff that was supposed to be here with me today is a dementia Alzheimer's memory loss specialist. We had her drop that title after her grant ended, just a memory loss specialist, but she's highly trained in Alzheimer's dementia as that relates to just general memory loss. So if you're feeling like, you know, I'm losing track of things, I've got my organizational skills are changing or not that great, she specializes in that. Whereas I specialize in the adaptive equipment, the technology, so her and I team up often to work with you as an individual and find out what makes the most sense at the time, but also if you've got some progression due to a disability or memory loss, what's appropriate to introduce and when. So a lot of this stuff again is going to be on this flyer. There's a whole bunch of other information here as well. And then transition is another core service that we provide. If that's transition out of nursing home, or if that's transition on the opposite end of the spectrum for youth into independent living, maybe moving away from parents, going to school, whatever that might be. So those are services that all the, if you guys move to a different state, those are services that you can get from your independent living center that serves that area. Additionally, all of the centers provide other things. So we've got some of the other things. Work incentives, benefits counseling. So if you're receiving benefits due to a disability, oftentimes that limits how much you can work. You lose access to those benefits. So we help you balance that. Your insurance, how much you could work to not lose some of that, so that people know what to do that way. Residential assessment. I know our staff have been up here and worked with maybe a few of you folks. We've got now 4 people that are part of that team. I put 5 fingers and then said 4. That's your little test for the day to tell you I'm a little off. So those staff can come into the house and make recommendations to you if it's not accessible for you. Some of the most common things there are going to be ramps, bathrooms, doorways. There's a lot of old, beautiful homes here, you know, so that takes a good mind of how do I make my home accessible without making it look goofy by knocking things out. So we've got some very good creative staff that can help you make sure that your home is accessible for you. Our goal is to help give you the tools to stay home and stay independent in your community. We've got a Medicaid personal care program. I don't need to touch on that too much. YCHIP can hit you on that if that makes any sense. Dementia care specialist, we talked about that a little bit. We've also got a LEND program, durable medical equipment. You guys have a wonderful resource for that here in Door County. Again, that's very unique in our coverage area in Wisconsin, in fact, to have a county service for that. But if anybody needs wheelchairs, walkers, bath chairs, commodes, any of those kind of things, again, hit your team here primarily, and if there's something that they don't have access to, they would know to let me know, and we'll try to transfer equipment from what we've got as well, what we might have access to. But I think that, in fact, we're kind of trying to model our program after what Ann's doing out of Sturgeon Bay, because it's such a successful program, so I can't hardly say we're any better at that. ADA assessments, I'm not sure if that's relevant, but businesses can also hire me to come in and give them a report of ADA compliance. A lot of companies that apply for USDA grants are required to do an ADA self-evaluation. That's the most we get because most people don't want to bring attention to themselves or pay to make things more accessible. But I think in a great community like this, if you've got a business or you've got something that you're wondering how accessible it is or what accessibility really means by ADA, I can come in, look at everything, and then give a full report of ADA compliance. Nothing gets reported, it's all self-evaluations. We're not like the ADA police, but we give you some tools so that you know if you're able to do some restructuring or if you do make some modifications to know what else to focus on to make sure that you're as compliant as you can be accessible to as many people as possible. We have a model showcase home in Green Bay. I would encourage you to check it out sometime if you're able. Ideally, give us a call and let us know that you're coming. That being said, it is open 8 to 4:30 every day. We just don't have a lot of staff there. We cover 17 counties, so like me today, people are generally out in the community. You might just catch our receptionist if you do a pop-in. If you're okay with that, by all means, pop in our building anytime. So we've got a model bedroom. We've got 5 different bathrooms, all set up a little bit differently. Different types of toilets, raised toilets, different types of sinks, fully accessible kitchen. So our goal was to set up that model showcase home for accessibility that doesn't look like a hospital. So we try to promote ways that you can make your home easy to use, but also make it look homey. So we'd love to have you come out. Sometimes it does make sense for us to have the appointments there. That might be trickier, but if there's a way you can team that up with a doctor's appointment in Green Bay, we can call and schedule that. We've got a lot of equipment available. Otherwise, I pack a suitcase and that's what we bring along. We can usually accomplish the same things when we go on the road and do home visits, but I don't have access to as many tools, and it might then take another visit. So that's our showcase. And then assistive technology, so that's my role. I'm the assistive technology and adaptive rec specialist. So assistive technology is any of these gadgets that can help you overcome a barrier due to aging or disability. So I brought some of these things along here today, and I'll kind of walk through some of these as an example and explain what this thing is that I keep tripping over. And then I want to touch on as well, adaptive rec. So this is kind of something new. I just was able to hire a new staff to help with some of my day-to-day so I could expand some new programs. So I've been writing grants to acquire equipment that's expensive so that people can have access to it and use it for free that wouldn't be able to afford it on their own. One example is we've got an Action Track wheelchair. It's an outdoor wheelchair. It's a power wheelchair with tracks on it, like tank tracks. It's super rugged, durable. People use it for hunting. It goes through snow, it goes on ice. We get a lot of people that want to do ice fishing but don't have mobility. Maybe they don't. So what I don't, my passion with this adaptive rec was, again, after my father's accident, we used to camp and hunt and fish and hike. We had land up in Florence County. We did all of that stuff together. After his accident, we didn't have access to any of those tools or resources or think it was possible. So he stopped doing all of those things. And by the time I tripped over this organization and we found out about these resources that were available, they're just hard to find. It was too late. He had already kind of like gotten comfortable in his house and wasn't willing to explore some of that stuff. So this wheelchair we've got is $13,000. It's expensive, so a lot of people aren't willing to do that. But what I will tell you is a lot of people that have used it love it so much they don't want to give it back to me, and I found a way to purchase it if they have access to the financial means, or we can work with you on writing grants to be able to acquire that. I think I skipped over it, but we don't sell anything. We have all kinds of equipment. All the grants that I'm funded under, I put in money to purchase equipment so that we can demonstrate it and loan it to you to help you make informed decisions. So that's our role. People come in and they think we're a store, or they think I'm biased, promoting. I have no say in any of this other than helping you make informed decisions. I'm willing to share kind of feedback I've gotten, and I'm happy to share if people think a product is good or bad and why, but I'm not biased. We do get people that will donate things to us, but I tell them up front I'm not going to use that in anything with a consumer. So that's the purpose of all the equipment that we have, is to help you make informed decisions through trial. So if you come to our building, or if I come to you in a home visit with a suitcase full of stuff that's relevant, we pull things out of the bag and we start trying it. I don't want any of you to trust that I know what I'm talking about. I want to prove it to you. So you tell me about your barriers, and I come up with some ideas, and I bring some equipment to you, and we try it out, and we decide, does this work? Yeah, it works pretty well. Okay, well, let's try this one. Does that work? Yeah, you know what, that's better. Great. Put that to the front of the table and push the other one back. And we kind of go through that process, and if it's not something that we have, we do some research on it. We try to make an informed decision without it together, or maybe I put that on my wish list and we purchase that through other funds, or I write more grants to get more of that equipment. So that's what all of my stuff is for, and that's my primary role, is help you determine what types of devices might be helpful for you, and let you make that decision, not let me talk you into it. Adaptive Rec, another device I purchased through the Christopher Reeve Foundation, is a recumbent bike. So I get a lot of folks that love biking. This was a funder of mine, is a very passionate, competitive biker, encouraged me to go this route. I do a lot of mountain biking as well, and if I were to incur a disability and I couldn't bike, that would be an area that I wouldn't want to give up. So this recumbent we've got, I worked with an organization, it's power assist. So if you've got balance issues and you're not riding a two-wheel bike, a recumbent is a great solution. It's got power assist, so if you don't have a lot of strength, if you've had a a stroke, if you've had MS and you've got limited muscle control, Parkinson's, if you're an amputee and you're pedaling with one leg. So there's power assist with this thing. There's actually a throttle on it. You can do full assist as well. So I've had paraplegics with no leg function whatsoever be able to ride a bike. Now it's not the same experience maybe, there's hand cycles as well, but this is just an idea of something that you can try. So again, if you feel like, you know, I don't bike anymore, I used to love biking, my old bike didn't work, there's other types of adaptive bikes that might work for you, maybe not. I can guarantee that this one's the right solution or that it's even possible, but let's try it, right? I hear all the time, I wish I would have known of this sooner, and what's the other one? Now that I've got a microphone in my hand, I'm going to lose track of those things. But I'd like to help you explore and overcome those barriers with this stuff. Creating accessible opportunities. I'm working on creating a blind bowling league right now with the National Federation for the Blind. So I've got an audience of people that would like to be involved in creating that opportunity. We just started a sled hockey program. So for wheelchair users that want to play hockey, we've got a sled hockey program. I found a funder who bought all this equipment, is willing to equip 10 youth with disabilities with helmets, all the gear that they would need, and cover travel expenses. So, you know, if there's the league itself is for youth, but the skating opportunities were meant to be across the board. So if you'd love to ice skate, but you can't skate or don't want to stand because it's hard ice to fall on, maybe sled hockey is an opportunity for you to achieve that. Wheelchair basketball, softball, tennis, soccer. There's a resource in Milwaukee that does a lot of that, but there's nothing closer to our area. So I've got a neighbor that's 2 miles away from me, travels down to Milwaukee. It's a 2-hour drive for us every Saturday to play basketball with his peers. Meanwhile, I've got 3 kids that play basketball with their sports team. They just do it after school, right? Those resources are readily available. So I'm trying to create these other types of programs for people, opportunities that don't exist. And I love feedback. If people are looking for opportunities that don't exist, I'd love to explore that with you. I had somebody looking for power chair soccer. And it was one person that reached out to me. I know it exists. I'd love to be part of it, but I didn't want to spend a lot of time on it because I hadn't had anybody reach out. He asked if I'd love to help, if I'd like to help him get started with it, and I said, absolutely, let's find some people. We'll put our resources together and we'll try to find a way to make that happen. I'm also on the Disability Advisory Council for the DNR. So I do a lot of work with accessibility in the state parks. Peninsula is my favorite ever. So I've done a lot with Eric and that team. We were involved in a lot that happened with that tower. I love those types of projects. My wife and I went to Rock Island for the first time this past summer. And I started working with them right away. You know what? This isn't rural wheelchair accessible. How would a wheelchair even get in this little area? So that's a project I took to the DNR. And I said, hey, what happens if like my dad and I wanted to go camping on Rock Island? It's a state park. It's supposed to be fully accessible for everybody. So we like to look at those opportunities and make them available for everyone. Am I doing on time here? Not as bad as I thought. I also meant, you know, if anybody has any questions or input or things that they want to say, feel free to speak up. I don't like doing the formal presentation of this, so if you've got anything you'd like to add, any of the stuff you've used, any experience to share, bark it out. I can repeat it into the mic so others can hear. Hearing loss is a big piece of my role. For a long time, it was 50% of my job, and 50% of my funding is to work with people as it relates to hearing loss. There's a really good funding source lined up for that called TEPP, Telecommunications Equipment Purchase Program. And what that is, it's a tax that you pay on your landline or cellular bill, and it makes funding available to you if you have a disability that prevents you from using standard telecommunications methods. So if you've got hearing loss and you're struggling to hear on the phone, give me a call. I can try to help you with that. If you've got vision loss that prevents you from being able to see the little buttons on your phone, check out those guys. I can see them well up here. Maybe in the back you can't if you've got vision loss. I can see it. There's a lot of solutions for that. Memory loss. So there's photo phones. If you've got some memory loss or dialing is difficult or dexterity is difficult, we can put a picture of somebody that you're wanting to call and you just push the button next to their picture. It's called a photo phone. There's phones that also have that incorporated in. So there's all sorts of different solutions. If hearing loss is a barrier for you. Yes, ma'am?
Are the photo phones amplified also?
The question is, are the photo phones amplified? Yes. So in order to be covered under this TEP program, there has to be amplification tied into everything. So all of the ones that I've worked with, there probably are that don't, but yes, everyone that I've ever worked with has amplification as well. Yep. So other barriers that people experience, and you guys have a great audiologist here on the island, which is awesome, and we're going to be touching base more on that, which I would love to collaborate with, and we'll all be a resource for you together. So if people are coming to me because they hear about this program, we talk about do you hear when the phone rings? You know, if you've got hearing loss and you're having a hard time hearing on the phone, are you missing calls because you don't hear it ring when you're down the hall? And then more concerning, do you hear your smoke alarms? And I ask these kind of questions when this comes up. It's scary to me how many people don't really know. Or they'll say yes, you know, when I push that button, I hear that smoke alarm. Well, that's great, because when you push the button, the smoke alarm is 12 inches from your head and your hearing aid is, right? That's probably not going to happen when there's a real fire and you need to know that thing. I'd like you to go home tonight, take out your hearing aid, because you probably don't sleep with it, and then put your ear into the pillow, the way that you probably sleep, and then see if you can hear that smoke detector that's all the way on the other side of the house in the kitchen, where most of those fires start. Most people, and I'm seeing some people look at each other that maybe don't know the answer to that themselves. Those are the kind of questions we like to ask. So there are smoke detectors that could go off in the kitchen, and you'll have something next to your bed that will flash lights at you. It'll have a loud audible if that's an option for you. Little vibrating pucks, bed shakers. So we're going to use your other senses. If the hearing isn't reliable, let's look at tactile, let's look at vision, let's use some of those other senses. And then apply to doorbells. You know, a lot of people, just come on in, I'm not going to hear the doorbell anyway, I don't want to miss you. Door knock sensors, if you're not hearing that. Motion detectors, not necessarily for the case of security, but I hear all the time, you know, Dad's always in his chair watching TV when I come over. He just tells me to let myself in, or I knock and I don't hear, but I can see he's there through the window. So I let myself in, I walk up to Dad and I, hey Dad, and I touch him on the shoulder, and it scares the heck out of him and he jumps. So a motion detector, maybe something as simple as, you know, notifying him. I would hear the door myself, so I would turn around. If you don't have that hearing, that motion detector might flash a lamp next to the TV, and you know that that means motion, so you know to turn around and it avoids some of that kind of stuff. What else did I want to talk to on that note? Alarm clocks. Sounds like most are retired here, so maybe alarm clocks either aren't relevant, or you've got such a built-in alarm clock that you don't need that. But maybe once a year you've got a doctor's appointment, and it's earlier, it was the only availability that they had, and you're not used to getting up at 6. Maybe that once a year. So again, the alarm clock, flashlights, shake the bed, super loud noise, whatever it is that we can do if a standard alarm clock isn't working for you. And then there's funding. So this funding is what we would use to offset those costs. It's not an income-based program. Everybody who's got hearing loss, vision loss, mobility impairment, memory loss, speech impairment is eligible for that program every 3 years. That's the only eligibility. So it's not meant to be income because you can't afford it. It's meant to be, why should you have to pay $200 for a phone? Look at this guy here, this cordless phone. This one's $170. It's a regular cordless phone. It's just got a really good quality amplifier in it. It's $169.99 plus tax and shipping. So you're almost $200 to pay for that thing. I don't have any hearing loss. I can just go to, well, maybe not for landlines anymore. I can go on Amazon and probably get one for like $30. That'll work just fine for me, a cordless phone. Or any rummage sale, anybody that's selling any of that stuff, maybe $5. But because you've got hearing loss, you're gonna pay $200. So the purpose of this voucher says you shouldn't have to pay more money. So they decided about $100 is that difference in cost. So the base voucher is $100. So if you want to apply for that every 3 years, it's $100 towards the phone. It's not free. You're not entitled to more because you've got hearing loss that I am. It's just, you know what, we're both going to pay the same amount out of pocket now. Here's to offset the cost for that specialty equipment. So that's the base. There's an $800 voucher. So if we start talking about those fancy alarm clocks and bed shakers and all that other fancy stuff, those things get expensive. Those are like $500 for a system because light doesn't travel like sound does. You know, so if you've got a flashing light in your bedroom, if you're in the kitchen, you're not going to see that. You're not going to be notified. So now we have to have multiple flashing lights. So you've got additional equipment in order to get access to the same information. So there's an $800 voucher for that. Now that requires you pay $100 out of pocket, and then we've got funding assistance for that as well if need be. But you can get access to all of that in addition to a phone. There's mobility. So I work with a lot of folks who are don't have the ability to physically pick up a phone and dial. So there's a $1,600 voucher for that. We can talk about voice dialing. We can have button switches. If you've got the ability to move in any way, I can probably get you access to some piece of technology. And that's a bold claim I like to make, and I haven't really had anybody call me out on it just yet. Might not be your best solution, but I can usually figure out a way to do it. So if you can activate this little button, if that's with your fingers, if that's pinching it with your head, if that's armpit movement, if you can wiggle one toe, if you're able to activate something like this, if you can't push that button. I had an individual with ALS, he kind of snickered, he couldn't speak, he had somebody there with him, but it took us a while to communicate this. He kind of snickered at me when I made that claim. I said, I can get everybody here working an iPhone. And I don't mean to be like technology is the best and everybody should have it, but if you get access to an iPhone, there's a lot of different things you can do. It can be a communication device, in person, you can telecommunication, text, email, you've got access to internet, all sorts of different things. And I said, I bet you I can get everybody here access to be able to control that. This guy, I think he thought he got me. So I said, well, show me what you can do. He had a little bit of movement. Can you drive your wheelchair, right? Nope, I don't. He thought he had me. He doesn't have that movement. Can you move anything? Can you move your head? No, I can't even move my head. He was that far along in his ALS. Well, there's blink switches, so if you can blink, but then you gotta have something attached to your face. I said, show me your strongest movement. And again, he's kind of smiling at me, which he could do well. And he said, show me your strongest movement. Do you have some grip? And he said, no, I can move my fingers. I said, oh, perfect. Can you squeeze this? Didn't have enough strength to squeeze that. All he could do was put his fingers together. So I built a contact switch. It doesn't take any pressure. These are little Velcro straps that I built. All you have to be able to do is connect them together. And I built that thing in about 20 minutes with some stuff I had laying around. I can plug this into an iPhone, and I can get you full access to an iPhone just by doing this. And if anybody wants to take me up on that, I can demonstrate that for you another time. But I promise you, with any function, we can be. So that's the mobility voucher, is what that
was his reaction?
What was his reaction?
No, once it started happening.
Well, he didn't use it anyway. So, I mean, he just still smiled at me, but he thought he got me. I could tell he had a real sarcastic attitude, not too dissimilar to mine. So I appreciated it, but he didn't end up, because it's slower. So in order to do that, you would use what's called switch scanning. It moves kind of a target around your screen, and then you have to tap it when you want to select. So it goes slower, and he's like, I don't have patience for that. I don't really care for an iPhone anyway. He just wanted to call me out on it. So mobility voucher, and again, it's across the board. If somebody is completely blind, I can get them to use an iPhone fully functional. And that's a communication device. So we can get those types of things funded under this voucher program. And I will try to wrap it up here. I said I would leave time for a Q&A, and we're down to 3 minutes. So that's the TEP program, and I'm going to leave some information with the audiologist here as well, or reach out to YCHIP or contact me directly if you'd like to learn about that or any of this. Maybe I won't get too much into this, but I've got some different playing cards. For somebody with vision loss, playing cards is a big one. I bring these big ones because they're goofy. A lot of people, they'll see this in a store, or if you say you've got vision loss and you're not playing cribbage anymore, somebody in your family is gonna go find these at the store, and here, mom or grandma or whatever. Well, have you ever held a handful of these things or tried to the deck, right? I mean, that's true. So to me, prior to my dad's accident, when I didn't know anything about disability, that's what I would have bought for somebody who needed it, because I didn't know any better. It's completely impractical. Look at this one. It's a standard size, and it's actually bigger. It's better use of space. The other reason I hate this big one, I would just put a huge black K on there for king, and use the entire thing. So if you're super poor vision, at least you've got a big thing. The K is not even that big on there. So this is just another example of another playing card. It's a standard size. You can shuffle it like normal. If you've got some arthritis or inability to shuffle, there's card shufflers, and There's other assistive technology. So there's all sorts of different cards, different card holders. I've got some phones up here, and I'm able to stick around for a little while, so you can come look at this. I just grabbed whatever I could fit in the bag to bring, but I was hoping to kind of get everybody maybe interested in realizing the concept that there's a lot of stuff out there that we all don't know about. Med management, I think YCHIP works a lot with the life alert systems, and that's great. I think there's funding available for that, so maybe that's not for a lot of people I work with, there's not funding available for life alert programs, or they're not eligible for it, or whatever. So there's another system available for those that can't afford that reoccurring cost. It's similar, it's got a little button on it, except it doesn't call a monitored service. It just uses your phone line and it speed dials your phone. So you pre-program a few contacts, maybe your neighbor, maybe a family member, and then maybe you just put 911 as number 3, which you're not supposed to do, so just disregard I said that. But by pushing the button, you're getting kind of a similar response. It's just not through a monitored service. I would never try to tell you do this instead of the monitored service, but for people that can't afford that, that's not an option. They come to me looking for alternative ideas. This is maybe one of them. This isn't a great solution, but it's got a fall sensor on it as well. A lot of them are starting to incorporate that. What happens if I fall and I'm unconscious? How do I push the button then, Calvin? So a lot of these start with this fall sensor. This one doesn't work great. Technology's really come a long way lately. Apple Watches, as I look at my old-fashioned watch, which doesn't detect anything but time. The new Apple Watches have fall sensors on them as well. So if you turn that on, if you're concerned about slipping on the ice when you go to the mailbox, if you've got that activated and set up appropriately, if you fall, it'll call emergency for you. You know, so there's different options available if you don't have access to a standard lifeline. Different push button reminders, TV remotes, I hear that all the time. That little fancy remote I get with all the tiny little buttons. I can't feel the buttons, so I hit 3 of them at once, or I can't see them. I don't use 95 of the 100 buttons on there anyways. This one's got an on-off switch. It's got a mute, and then it's got channel up and channel down. That's it. So a simple remote. Other times, if you don't mind, we can come to the home, get our pocket knife out, and cut all the other buttons right off. Right off. So you can't even push them. So it's not always equipment. Sometimes it's just modifying and working with what you've got to make it usable for you. And that's free, right? If you don't mind me destroying your remote. Video games, I do a lot with adaptive video games as well. If you're interested and can't use a remote on that, this is a little don't cut your fingers off with a knife thing. It works, I've tried it, I've tested that one out. You don't want to stab yourself with this one on, so it's not going to stop like the tip of the knife, but it does a pretty good job if you're trying to like slice a tomato and your finger slips or your knife slips a little bit, you're not going to like put a big gouge into your finger. And we've tried it, it works pretty well. This thing was about $6, I think. It feels like a regular glove, but it's got some sort of a fancy mesh in there that helps that. Nail clippers, if you struggle holding onto a nail clipper, this thing's mounted to a board, you can put your hand in there and just kind of push down on it. So again, you come to us with your barriers, we talk about what it is that you'd like to be able to do, and we see if there's a technique that we can change a little bit, or if there's some equipment that we can put in place of it. And then the last thing is my little tripping device, which I've managed not to hit yet. So this thing is cool. I had an individual with ALS, young, he wasn't too much older than me. He wasn't to a mobility device yet, so he was falling a lot. I don't love to see that, but we're a consumer choice organization, and we respect wherever he's at and try to help with the barriers. So his wife said, I can't get him up off the floor. So he's had times where he just has to stay there. We've called the neighbors to help. If it's the middle of the night, I feel really bad bugging them. I've checked on him, he's okay, we just can't get him off the floor, and he's slept on the floor a couple times. Brian, is everything okay? Are you all right? Do we need to call the paramedics? No, I'm fine, I just can't get off the floor. So this was a device that I had seen before. We didn't have it. It's an expensive little bugger, so I wouldn't want to tell you, oh, if you're falling on the floor, just go buy one of these. It was like $1,800 for this thing. So one of the grant funds I had available was a perfect fit to be able to get one of these things, and I was able to give it to them. You erect this thing together on the floor. I've got it cranked up, but you would build it under the person. So it's this piece you lay down kind of under their legs, and then you plug the 4 legs into it, and then this little back support piece. And then and I can demonstrate this after, and it's got a crank handle. You crank it until it puts you up into a seated position like this. So it was a really cool solution, and they used that thing, she was a little hesitant to tell me, but I think she said she used about 12 times to help him get off the floor. Again, he was fine, it wasn't an emergency situation, but she wasn't able to bend over, she was starting to have back issues because she was helping try to get him off the floor. Okay, so this is just kind of a neat idea, there aren't a lot of other solutions like this. This thing was $1,800, they make a powered version that has like a push button on it, that thing's like $4,800. So, this I thought was really neat. We've bought, I think we've got 4 of them now. We do a lot of work with our ALS association. This is a perfect fit. We give it to them, we let them use it. That family used it for, it was about a month and a half until he finally got to a position where he was using a mobility device. So, you know, we're a consumer driven organization. We want to empower their choices and their decisions. You want to keep following that, that's fine. We don't think it's the greatest thing, but we're going to help fix your issues if you're stuck with them. So this was a really neat solution for them. So, you know, again, if this is something that might be of interest to you, we bring it along, we let you try it, show you how to use it, and then we leave it with you. You can hold on to it for a couple of weeks or whatever until we see you next, so that you can do an actual trial with it. Because for $1,800, you want to be like darn sure that that's going to be an appropriate solution for you. So all of this equipment is available for demo, for trial, or for a loan for a temporary accommodation. So if this is something you're going to pursue and we're going to work on that funding, this will tide you over at least until we're able to get your own. So that said, I think I'm going to wrap that up there. I've got business cards, I've got brochures, I've got flyers. I'm going to leave all this with you guys here so that you've got it. If anybody else is interested in any of it, but please call if there's anything that we can do to assist. Do I have time to, does anybody have questions, or, again, I know I'm over.
No, you're good. There's questions?
Yep.
Questions?
You mentioned the life assist buttons that you can wear around our neck or on our wrist. The initial cost of that is one thing, but it's the ongoing monthly cost. Is there anything to cover that out there for people who can't afford it?
The question is about the life alerts.
Question I have too.
So you're saying there's an upfront cost, but the reoccurring isn't funded?
No upfront cost.
There is no upfront cost, it's
Okay.
just the monthly service.
Yeah.
Because we install them for the hospital.
Yeah, so I don't know of a great solution for that. So our agency, we don't have funding, we're a nonprofit, and we operate in the negatives every year. Anyways, we try to do fundraising, we try to have some pots available, but those reoccurring charges are really difficult for us, and I know that there's a common issue with that. So I don't have a great solution to that one, and that's where we would look at maybe using some of these devices, knowing it's not ideal, it's not exactly what you're getting with that type, it's not as reliable, but it's a different solution compared to nothing.
And technology up here isn't as
It's
sophisticated.
better.
Right.
It's getting better.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, and those are all things that we consider. You know, I'm learning that with a consumer visit I had before I came here today. We talked about a lot of smart home stuff, but
Secure.
smart home doesn't work if the internet's down or intermittent.
Get it?
So we need to look at maybe some less smart things that are easier and more reliable to work with. Any other questions?
If I was alone.
Yes, sir.
That's up to these devices.
Mhm.
How many different types are there? That might be a great topic. I think,
Yeah.
you know, so we know some of them are wireless. Some of them are just wireless within the house. And some of them probably have that incorporated when you fall, it'll go off.
Are you talking about the call devices specifically?
Yeah,
so-
somewhere, if you fall down and your assistant isn't with you,
Right,
and you could be laying there overnight, you could be in the chair, I'm
right,
interested in seeing how that works.
yeah,
It looks like a device that we had on a rescue suit where it slid around the person.
Yep. Yep.
And, getting back to the devices, what is the best for up here? We don't have great, cell phone coverage. We have good cell phone coverage in other areas, and we have bad cell phone coverage.
yeah.
And we're not a big enough community that anybody's fighting to go over and capture the market.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, so the question for those that didn't hear it is, what kind of options are there for the life alert systems? It's a tricky one. In fact, we're working with another individual that doesn't have reliable cellular. We're looking at using some funding for that on the reoccurring, but we can only pay for a year of it. So what does sustainability look like? There's not, for everything I do, there's really not just one best
Yeah.
answer. Everything is very unique to the person, so I wanna look at, what is your routine, what are your highest risks for falling? We've looked at different monitoring devices, I'm not saying that you should all put cameras, but maybe having a camera outside the front door,
Yeah.
so a family member can watch, if you're concerned about falling on your way to the mailbox. So we can look at very individual, very situational, maybe an iPhone thing works, maybe you have a process in place. I'll check in, that would be a little unrealistic, but I'll check in hourly. A lot of people use the Meals on Wheels programs for something like that, because at least there's somebody checking on them every day. And the Meals on Wheels, if you don't answer the door at noon, and you didn't cancel your meal, that's a version of,
It's a flag.
yes, they're sitting there for potentially 24 hours at that point, so it's very unique, and that's where, we all work together, and I'll pick your team's brain, and we'll all try to work on what might be an appropriate solution, depending on what variables we've got and what options are at play. So I'm sorry, but I do not have a one answer
There's never one
for
answer.
that, right? And as far as this, you're right, similar to the solution that paramedics would use. Yep.
It's called the scoop.
Those are
Yeah.
super expensive. The other version that people have seen, it's an air system. So it's an air chair that you would roll under somebody and you would inflate it and it puts them up in a seated position. That was the other more common solution prior to this as well. So there are some other alternatives to that. And I'm gonna keep talking if you don't take the mic away from me.
Take the mic away, okay?
Any other questions otherwise that I can answer? Otherwise, I'll be here.
He's gonna hang around for a little bit, and we're gonna be looking on regular, scheduled future visits, so then that might be a helpful thing if you have questions or you wanna meet with them, or there'll be more on that to come. We're just starting the brainstorming. So if you could fill out your survey, we appreciate it. We're gonna draw a name for the $25 Jackson Harbor Scoop gift certificate. You get to draw.
Why?
You get to draw. You draw your own name. You're gonna
No,
draw.
my name's not.
We got.
Faith Overdahl. Thank you, everyone.
They better take